to FBA Profits. I'm Leland.
I'm Zubi.
All right, so today we're talking about pricing strategies. This is it can be a really massive, big topic, right? Because pricing strategies are incredibly important with what you're doing. There's different ones out there to just, cover your costs plus a little bit. Clearly, FBA is a little bit more complicated, especially if you're doing retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, because you're going to have additional costs associated with it. If you just do a Google search online, you're going to run into a lot of strategies by people who then want you to buy some type of product from them. Either it's data and you put in your information and it'll tell you where to price, or it's something that we've been talking about recently, which is the repricers. So the majority of what I saw out there was what I would call, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost a race to the bottom strategy with this little caveat to save them. And the strategy is this: be the lowest one, or if you really want to be tricky, be a percentage or two higher than the lowest one. So the joke is, if I do that, then you do that, then I do that. And we just keep going back and forth. And pretty soon we're probably taking on losses and not knowing it, so that we can continue to create revenue so we don't go out of business, race to the bottom, right?
Right. And the way that these repricers really, the way to ensure that you don't go to a loss is to set a minimum price based on the lowest amount of ROI that you're willing to take for that product. But race to the bottom, the penny down, is it's prevalent in the industry. It's prevalent on Amazon, but it's every seller hates it. But every seller has to do it almost because the other ones are doing it. It's like you can't rely on the others not to do it. That's why it's important when you're setting a pricing strategy. It's important to look at both categories and each specific item and each specific SKU that you're selling. Because if in your research, let's say you're looking at Keepa and you're researching historical data on it, and you see that the price of this item has been selling at, let's say, $20 for 8 months straight. And now all of a sudden, the price has come down to $17. And you can see the step-by-step drop of that. Well, that's somebody else, at least one other seller coming on that listing and turning on a repricer, now competing against whoever was already selling on there, who didn't have to turn on their repricer, or their repricer kicked in, and they kept on going one below the other, one penny below the other, in an attempt to try to get the buy box. What happens is, if you just look at that and say, all right, so there's only 2 sellers at the lowest price, the rest are all up over $20. Let's just, if I'm a seller on that, I'll just wait, let the guy sell out at $17, and it'll come right back to me. If I'm trying to decide if I should purchase that product, well, yeah, if I can, that seller is brand new, he might not come back, it's good. But if you're seeing that the price, there's 11 different people at the exact same price, and one person goes down by a penny, 10 others are going to go down by a penny, that is a recipe for disaster. It's something that you will run into as a seller. You will get stuck on products like that, especially fast-selling products. But you want to try to stay away from a price war. You want to try to stay away from a race to the bottom as much as you can. I generally set my minimum price on my repricer higher than what my minimum ROI requirement usually is, simply because I don't want to race all the way down to the bottom. So and there's different, depending on which repricer you use, there's different tools or different it's different rules. That's what I'm trying to say. Different rules you can set for each of the products, whether you want to compete on buy box and match the lowest price, you want to compete on buy box and beat the lowest price by a penny. If the buy box is suppressed, do you want to match the lowest price? Do you want to beat the lowest price? So you should always try to, as a long-term strategy, you don't want to beat the buy box price, because as long as you match it, you should get your share of the buy box. But if one person has set their price, their rule to go 1 cent below the lowest price, well then everybody else could have it to match the buy box price, but that one person is going to continue to drop the price down. So it's important to understand the basics of how a repricer works, and it's important to set your prices so that you are not adding to the race to the bottom as much as possible.
That's funny. So you're talking about the buy box, and that was the one asterisk that of the, hey, I do 1.5% higher than the lowest price, but it's only to get the buy box. Mm-hmm. And so I think intrinsic in here, and I have a side question to this, but I think intrinsic to here too is stability, right? So depending on your catalog, how much you are putting out there, and this is getting to the question because I know we have a lot, and you might not have the time to check every single one. And some of these services allow you to get alerts when certain things are happening and some don't. So it does require you to sort of do inventory check of what else is happening. Why isn't it moving? But in my opinion, keeping some type of stable price, not moving this thing up and down all the time, is a better strategy overall if it's not something that you're heavily competing against. And that's to your point, right? If there's 11 other people, this would be the same in any business, whatever you're doing. If there's a lot of competition, you got to be nimble. You got to know absolutely what's happening at any given moment, especially what your other competitors are doing, and be ready for losses. Be ready to take it on the shins and say, okay, we're going to do this again. Let's just keep going. If it's a handful of other people, right, don't you want to stay the course and not have you or the repricer just bouncing it up and down, up and down?
If you can afford it, yes. Yeah. And the key there is cash flow, right? Because this business is driven by cash flow. So if you have sufficient cash flow to be able to replenish and send an inventory on a continuous basis, and you don't need those sales to really get that additional cash flow, then absolutely. But there will come times when you need cash. You need to have money come in because, let's say, fourth quarter is around the corner and you really need to get these items sold so that you can go and buy the electronics and the toys and the things that really move on Q4. And you're trying to build up your cash reserves in order to purchase additional products for that season. In that case, then yeah, you go back in and change your repricer so that you are, lower your minimum ROI requirement and change it up. But in general, you definitely, especially on replenishable ones, products that you can replenish, you don't want to lower the price to the point where it just doesn't make sense. You have access to it, try to, there's if the other sellers are large enough sellers and they understand the market well enough, then they will see that, hey, he's not lowering his price. He's trying to share the buy box with me. Let me do it as well. It's not collusion because you're not talking to anybody about it. It's actually you're helping other sellers to try to keep each other, you're competing, you're getting the buy box and you're sharing the buy box, but you're not killing the price. You're not racing to the bottom for it. On the same lines, there are a few times throughout the year where it's important for you to change the pricing rules that you have for your prices, for your inventory. The most important one is when you have to, on a monthly basis at the minimum, check your inventory to see which, if any of your inventory is coming up on long-term storage fees. Because if it's getting to 365 days or higher, now the storage fees go up so significantly that it absolutely does not warrant you keeping that inventory in stock. So either you remove that inventory or you change your pricing rules just to sell out. Because it's been sitting there for over a year. Amazon storage fees are minuscule for the first 12 months, but they really jump up after 12 months. So you want to change that up. Same thing for when Q4 comes up, right? The 75 cents per cubic feet for the first 9 months of the year is what Amazon charges you for their storage fees. for the last 3 months of the year, they charge $2.64 per cubic feet. It's a huge difference. So if you have items that are sitting there that you don't think are really Q4 material, like they don't sell on Q4 that well, get them out. Amazon won't let you send them back in for about 3 months, but you're still, that's Q4. So get them out before Q4 kicks in and then send them back in January. It also resets your 365 clock. So those are the key times when you want to really look at your inventory and look at changing your pricing rules so that you can either resell them or just get rid of and bring the inventory back. Other than that, if you don't have cash flow issues and you're getting sales, enough to be able to replenish your inventory, don't do a race to the bottom. It's not beneficial as a business owner.
Well, and it's funny, we have the relationship between pricing and inventory, because what you just described there was all about your inventory management. And of course it's wrapped up with the cash flow, but you were starting to talk about seasonality of your sales and getting ready with capital for the end of the year or the Q4. So it's definitely linked together. And I don't know, the way I was taught from some of the previous business experiences is it's easy to change pricing going downward. It's much harder to go back to your clients and go higher. I mean, obviously, like in the service world, that's almost impossible. I don't know with retail, right? Does anybody really notice it goes from 10 to 12 or 20 to 22? Maybe not, unless somebody priced it out. Like I'm thinking a lot of tech gear that, you look at and you're like, hey, that graphics card used to be 400, now it's 450. I missed it, right? And then maybe you don't buy. But down's always easier than up.
Yeah, but with Amazon, one of the reasons why you want to pay for a third-party repricer as opposed to just using Amazon's built-in repricer is that Amazon's built-in repricer only reprices down, whereas a third-party repricer also reprices up. So what that means is that when somebody that you're competing against and you're going down and down and down on price against, when they run out of inventory, your repricer will reprice it up to the next lowest seller's price. So that's, again, it's important for you as a seller. If you're the second or the third lowest price, stay there, because it'll come to you. And it'll come 1 penny. If they've set it as 1 penny below, it'll come 1 penny, but that's within 1.5% or 1% of the buy box, and you will get your share of the rotation of the buy box. So it's important to, if you have enough SKUs in your inventory, how much you pay for a third-party repricer on a per-month basis, and usually it's about $25 to $50 a month. It's well worth that investment because of the pricing.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to go. Story time where your repricer was too high on the upside, so when inventory ran out to our competitors, we wondered why we stopped selling that. I didn't know, but we'll leave that for another time. Well, so do check your numbers.
Since you brought it up, I'll mention it, because we just COVID was in March, and a large number, over 100,000 sellers got their accounts suspended in some manner because of overpricing errors. And what Amazon went in and said, hey, you're price gouging. And they weren't necessarily doing it intentionally. They had just set their max price at 150% ROI or 250% ROI, never really expecting it to get there. But come March, when COVID happened and the rush to Amazon happened, everybody ran out of inventory, and these guys were selling what normally was selling for $12 is now selling at $85. It's just ridiculous numbers, and they were selling. And then because they were selling at those prices, the buyers really started complaining. They had to buy it, whatever it might, Clorox wipes or whatever it was, toilet paper. They were buying it at these high prices, but every single one of them started complaining that, hey, this is price gouging. And so Amazon, news came on board, and then Amazon went in and started identifying product accounts that were doing this. I know personally that one of the largest Amazon resellers, that they do close to $80 million in sales a year, their account got suspended specifically because of this. So it could happen. So it's important to set your max price not too high, just in case something like that happens.
I love how you did that. You just wove what you did as to being like everybody else did it. So it's total. The biggest guy did it. So it's totally okay. Well done. So also within the pricing strategy, right? White label is interesting because you can get into floor pricing and you can really set the tone. You can even get into really high, what I would consider sophisticated pricing techniques, which is looking for willingness to pay. What would somebody pay for this perceived value, like a painting, versus I'm just going to do my floor value plus whatever the profit margin is and get ready to move it. You can kind of start to set your own tone, especially if there's a lot of perceived value. I think that's a different conversation. And if you have something that fits that criteria and you're listening to us and wondering, call us, because I know both of us could go on and on about that. We could certainly help. We can certainly create models for somebody to really run with that. But I know one of the other strategies is dealing with temporary price drops, right? These are, I wouldn't say giveaways, but they're discounts, right? So if it's something new for you or new to the market, you can do temporary price discounts. And it allows you not to race to the bottom, but to say, hey, for this period of time, you're getting an additional 20 or 30% off. That can stimulate a lot of sales for you, but it allows you to bounce back, right?
Yeah, and those are Amazon offers these deals, coupon deals, outlet deals. They have a lot of different tools to help sellers lower their price and make it cheaper for buyers to buy the prices. Generally speaking, I only use those things personally when I'm trying to liquidate something. When I just, I'm done with that product. I'm not going to reorder it. It's not going to get replenished, and I just want the money back. Because from an arbitrage perspective, it definitely doesn't make sense to pay for coupons and for advertising and whatnot. From a wholesale perspective, it could, especially if you have an exclusivity, or if there aren't any other or too many other sellers on that listing. So it could make sense for you to go ahead and create some kind of a deal or a coupon, just for a month or for a week, just to get the numbers, just to get the sales up, and to get the BSR down. It definitely makes sense from a private label perspective, but that's a whole different conversation, like you said. But yeah, it's those are options available. Again, if you have a large wholesale account that you have exclusivity with, it definitely makes sense to look at those strategies. If you have items that you have a boatload of, you have 10,000 of something and it's sitting in your warehouse or sitting in your garage and you can only send in 200 at a time, then yeah, it would definitely make sense because that's inventory you have to move and you have a lot of it. So rather than lowering your price, just offer, a 20% discount. Now Amazon has this option for Prime only discounts. That could also be, it's something that only Prime members will get, but the majority of the people who are seeing the buy box are Prime members anyway. So it really helps you get the buy box without really doing a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and it's something you said that I forgot to mention too here is part of the key of this, of course, is the buy box, but embedded in that is the bestseller ranking. The lower that number goes, the more likely you're going to get the price that you want, and more likely you have the buy box if you're driving that. So that's one of the other considerations in there is the goal of your pricing is to make sure that BSR is getting lower, which means you're heading,
it's also why it's very it's a good strategy if you can find products that Amazon sells but they run out of stock on regularly. So because with their pricing, they lower their price to a point where the BSR goes through the roof. I mean, it becomes 5,000 or 1,000, and when they run out, it's that ASIN still comes up when people search for it because that BSR is so low. So then it's selling at your price. I have a number of products that, they might sit there for a month or 2 months or even 5-6 months, but when they do sell, they're called long-tailed inventory. When they do sell, you're making 100, 150%, and they sell like that, like right away, because of the fact that Amazon has brought the BSR so low that it always pops up when somebody searches for that term.
This is not part of the topic, but I got to ask that because I don't know when this situation is going to come up. So you're talking about the long tail inventory that you, or product that you grabbed or have. And when you brought up this topic of when Amazon is the king of whatever this category of product is, when they run out, right? So that, to me, that seems like a mixture of, I don't know, panning for gold and playing the slots, that it's going to take a very specific situation for it to happen. I can't imagine that there's lists being generated just for that. It seems to know that Amazon's going to run out is too variable, too random. So how did you end up with those products? Was it a random situation or something that you foresaw?
Well, that's where Keepa comes in, right? Keepa is such a great tool in that it shows you historically when Amazon was in stock and when they ran out of stock. And what the goal is, as you're doing your research, you want to find those products where Amazon's in stock and then there's whites in between that chart, right? And there's a lot of white in between that chart. And it's something that happens regularly and has happened that way for the last year or 2 years or 3 years or however long that product has been on there. So you can see that the demand is so high that Amazon just can't get enough of it. And it's not like it's just because of COVID that they ran out of stock, that it's something that has been happening regularly. So that is one of those times when you can purchase that product. I mean, don't go too deep because you don't know how far, but you want to have that product in there because as soon as they sell out at $9, it's going to sell at $19 for you.
So I think you just gave some intermediate FBA strategy there. So I appreciate that in answering the question for everybody. That was a freebie if you didn't realize it. Tell me. So I think for us in the conversation of the pricing, we almost went to the same direction that all the Google returns came to, which is having the repricer, if you have a lot of SKUs, is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you're doing it on your own and it requires research, which, if you're not allergic to it, you're going to do anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So if we came to the same conclusion, you want to give a couple of repricers some free shout outs for those who are listening, or are you just going to have people have to call you on their private phone?
Out to us. I can tell you which ones I use and which ones we like, but I'll tell you this much. I think this is important when it comes to determining which repricer you use. And if you get in touch with us, I will gladly tell you which ones we use and which ones we recommend. Mm-hmm. But the differentiating factor between repricers to me for arbitrage sellers is, whether you pay $25 a month for something or $125 a month for something, comes to how quickly they reprice. Whether it's repricing every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. The faster it reprices, the greater your chances of keeping the buy box or having the buy box longer. But it's also the fact if two people have 15-minute repricers or two people have 5-minute repricers, then it's just that much faster that the price is going to drop down to somebody's minimum. So that is the biggest factor. There's other factors as well. Some repricers really have additional tools and data points that you can tailor specifically. But for our audience, I think the most important one is how fast is the repricer repricing. Rule of thumb, 15-minute repricers are great. The 5-minute repricer, in my opinion, is not worth the value of what you're getting. They're way too expensive for what they offer. If you are a huge seller, you're gonna want to reprice as fast as possible to get as much sales as possible. But the 15-minute repricer does the job perfectly. You will definitely see a bump in your sales if you've been selling for a while and you have inventory that's been sitting there. And it really takes a lot of the time. Before we got our repricers, I was sitting there on a weekly basis, going through our entire inventory one by one and checking the pricing. But this it saves it so much. The one we use also does certain international markets, and we just expanded internationally. So I paid for those ones as well, even though we don't have as many SKUs there. It does make sense to have them, even though I'm not, they're not generating nearly the kind of returns that the .com or the US marketplace is generating. It does make sense to have repricers.
So just to recap, when pricing, right, so we're really focused on OA and wholesale. And think about your floor, right? You have the bottom, the lowest that you can go. And the last bit of advice I would give is make sure you understand that number. It's more than just what you bought it for or how much it was to show up at your warehouse or the garage or wherever your base of operation is. It's more than just that. Make sure you have your fees covered. Make sure you're thinking ahead. Does this become a long tail, something that storage may be a factor? So you want to make sure you cover that too. So if all of those numbers add up to where you're competing, then you've done something right. And if you're going to start going lower and trying to compete with the lowest, make sure you know what you've gotten yourself into. Because I think we jumped, much like the online ones do, they go right into the repricer. And we always have to be cognitive of where is that bottom, and when I hit it, what are the consequences? As one of my mentors said, when we priced something and it was at a loss, 1 penny per unit, and he said, "Don't worry about it. We're going to make it up in volume." And the right joke is, with volume, you're going to lose more. So just understand where you are with all of that. Anything to add?
Along that exact same line, setting your minimum price is important, but having an understanding of what your average selling price is, and then having, and I know we've talked about this previously, having a high average selling price, ASP goal. So if you have a goal of having your average selling price across your entire sales, across all your inventory to be $20, then you don't want to price as your minimum price too many of your products under $20 or way under $20, because then you're defeating your own goal that you have set. So there's a lot of pegs that go together here, and it's important to keep all of them in mind when you're setting a pricing strategy. But the most important one is to have a pricing strategy. Don't just let it be there. Hey, whatever it is going to happen. I just want to get the sales. That's not really a viable business strategy for growth and profitability. But having a good ASP, knowing what your ASP is and having a goal of raising that ASP actually helps you with your pricing strategy as well, because now it sort of focuses you on, all right, these products are really selling at way below my ASP. If I set my minimum at this price, even though I'm going to get 30% or 40% ROI at this minimum, it's defeating my goal of having a high ASP. So therefore, I'm not going to keep it. Can I make this into a longer tail and wait for it? And if you can, and you do, and you are able to sell it at 80% ROI instead of 40%, it's a win-win situation for you.
Agreed. So if you're listening to this and you have questions, you're wondering what's happening, visit us at proasins.com. We have the Facebook group, which is Profitable ASINs or Profitable
ProAsins?
FBA. No, the Facebook group has a different name. We might want to talk about the brand on that a little bit, about bringing it all together. But reach out to us because we can certainly discuss it more in detail. And if you have any questions, you can ping us on that. Any other things you want to cover with pricing, my friend?
I think we did a good job.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Talk to you soon.